I'd like to start here this evening, ladies and gents. Here we go again. The government is changing the definition of what it means to be fully vaccinated. I believe that we can actually go live now, I think, to the government's vaccine planning committee. Is that right? That's right, they're massively moving the goalposts yet again, aren't they? They're planning to update the number of COVID vaccines you'll actually have to take if you want to travel abroad or, frankly, avoid another lockdown and the cancellation of Christmas. Well, forgive me, but I very much doubt that the good Lord sent his only son down to earth to die for our sins so that a politician can tell us whether or not the celebration of his birth can go ahead. Christmas is not the preserve of government, and it never will be. And for the travellers amongst us as well, apparently now, those who refuse to take the third booster jab will be forced to undergo quarantine and testing at their own expense, if indeed they're allowed to travel at all. Under the plans, even evidence of a negative test before flying won't be enough to get you on the plane without that third jab. So, it's no jab, no tan. Last night, a government source had this to say. This is not going to happen immediately, but happen it will. Sinister stuff, eh? Basically, this confirms what I think we all already knew, that we're going to be locked in this never-ending cycle of COVID vaccinations from now until probably forever. And they said that as long as the scientific and medical community say that this is the right thing to do, then, hey, they will do it. What, you mean like this member of the scientific community, NHS GP Dr Sarah Kayat, who had this to say on This Morning back in January?
Well, what's really excellent is, and it's a statistic that I think should be shouted from the rooftops, is that after 12 days from the first vaccination of the AstraZeneca vaccine, you are 100% effective against hospitalisation and death. So, you know, those are the statistics we need to be hearing.
Why haven't we heard that before?
Well, here I am.
Here she was, hey. Well, that's aged about as well as King Henry VIII's big toe, hasn't it? Now, I'm not here to have an anti-vaccine rant, far from it. I'm very glad, actually, that these things exist, and it's none of my business whether or not you've had one or two or three, for that matter. I'm not here to talk about side effects or anything like that. I'm here simply to raise some questions about what's going on. We went from 12 weeks to flatten the curve to a vaccine every 6 months. Matt Hancock said that once we'd vaccinated the vulnerable, we'd have our freedoms back, although to be fair, he also said he wasn't cheating on his wife. But actually now, we may all need a booster jab every 6 months. I think most of us could tolerate this if there was huge evidence that getting the vaccine actually stopped you from transmitting this virus. But just last week, data was published showing that individuals who've had 2 vaccine doses can be just as infectious as those who've not been jabbed, although, of course, it does for the most part reduce the effect of the virus. And now it emerges that Pfizer is lobbying to try to vaccinate 12 to 15-year-olds. This is all for a virus that kills a fraction of a percent of the people who get it and, by and large, bounces off children. And in America, the latest figures show that more children died of flu than COVID. We hear a lot about sleaze at the moment, don't we? Apparently, if you've got £3 million to donate to the Tories, you can become a lord. There were COVID contracts worth billions essentially drawn up on the back of a fag packet and handed to mates of ministers. There's a niggling voice in the back of my head that's getting louder and louder. Is our government under the thumb or, frankly, well within the grip of Big Pharma? A report published in The Guardian unveiled research showing that drug companies are giving groups of MPs and peers that campaign on health issues hundreds of thousands of pounds a year in hidden funding that could hand them undue influence. And then there are vast swathes of the media telling us that cases are rising, cases are spiking, they're surging, we should all be terrified. Well, actually they're falling. And in fact, yesterday's figures show the number of daily positive tests fell to 30,693, down almost 11% on the previous Saturday. It's all a bit strange, if you ask me. It just feels like there's something a little bit fishy going on. And now Sajid Javid is threatening another lockdown, threatening to cancel Christmas, saying, hey, if you don't get your booster jab, then we might cancel Christmas. Christmas is not the preserve of government. Our rights and freedoms are not flimsy little things that can simply be taken away at the stroke of a politician's pen. They are hard-earned. They are fought for. And indeed, a lot of British blood was spilled in the pursuit of our rights and freedoms, especially on the fields of Europe. COVID, apparently, is an incredibly clever thing. It can avoid a maskless barbecue at the G7. It won't end up killing loads of people at a climate rally in Glasgow or at a civil rights march in London. But goodness me, when you start carving that turkey, it comes straight into your lungs and it eats you alive. This government has caused the largest mental health crisis this country has ever known with its draconian lockdown laws, and now our health secretary thinks it's OK to instil such fear into the population again that elderly people are sitting there in their freezing cold homes this winter, looking forward to maybe the one day a year when all of their family can get together. And they will now be worrying about whether or not that's even going to happen. Did we sign up for this? Did we sign up for our freedoms being contingent on how many vaccines we have? Did we sign up to be threatened like this by our government? I don't remember signing that social contract.